A poor scholar who only passed the imperial exam as third place, thanks to my grandfather's dedicated teaching, turned around and married into the prince's mansion, then brought officers to raid my home. Just because I refused to become his concubine, he actually falsely accused us of plotting treason. Watching the county magistrate draw his sword against us, he laughed arrogantly, thinking he could cover the sky with one hand, until a burst of urgent horse hooves sounded, and the current emperor, with his attendants on a private visit, in front of everyone, dropped to his knees before my grandfather, who was just a commoner from the countryside, and called out, "Teacher." At that moment, my fiancé's face turned completely pale. "Hello friends, I am Faye. As the saying goes, righteousness is often found among butchers, while heartlessness is common among scholars. Today let's see how a hardcore talented woman relies on her own abilities to stir up storms and outwit her hypocritical fiancé. Fiancé Lu Mingzhao, after placing third in the imperial examination, curried favor with the royal family and married Princess Zhao He. When returning to his hometown to visit relatives, he brought people to my door and shamelessly proposed taking me as a concubine. The princess is of noble blood. I absolutely cannot let her be beneath anyone. But my teacher has shown me kindness, so I cannot betray you either. Fortunately, the princess doesn't know you and I were once engaged, so I told her I was taking back some country village girl as a chambermaid, or mistress, and she didn't object. He raised his chin with a look of bestowing favor. After I finished listening, I smiled faintly, and directly ordered the servants to throw him out along with the gift boxes he brought. He flew into a rage from humiliation. "Shimingju, you're just the granddaughter of a poor teacher. If you don't marry me, what decent family could you possibly marry into?" He assumed my grandfather was just a sour country scholar and teacher. Little did he know my grandfather was the imperial tutor to the current emperor. Half of all the civil and military officials in court had once received his teachings. As soon as Lu Mingzhao's wild words came out, my grandfather, who had walked out after hearing the commotion, was so angry his beard trembled, and his rosewood cane struck heavily on the stone slab. "Outrageous wretch! My granddaughter is not for the likes of an ungrateful traitor like you to insult." Lu Mingzhao retreated while shouting, "Teacher, I only call you teacher out of respect. But if you continue to be so ungrateful, don't blame me for being impolite. I am now the third-place scholar of the court, the prince consort of Princess Zhao He. A mere commoner from the countryside like you dares to disrespect me." Upon hearing this, grandfather became even more furious, pointing at him with a trembling finger and cursing. "Arrogant brat! You're the arrogant one! A mere commoner who only gave me guidance on a few essays dares to rely on this trivial favor to publicly insult a court official and imperial nobility." Lu Mingzhao held his head high, like a proud rooster. He continued to spout arrogant words. "I'm telling you, old man, it is because I know how to repay kindness that I'm willing to give your granddaughter a chance to enjoy fortune in the capital. If I weren't afraid that people would find out later, I once had a marriage engagement and it would affect my career. Do you think I'd bother making this trip?" I worried that grandfather would be so angry it would harm his health, so I quickly supported him and helped calm him down. Then, I looked at Lu Mingzhao with cold eyes. "Young Master Lu, the marriage engagement was merely spoken words back then. Since you concealed the engagement to curry favor with the powerful and married into the prince's manor, let's consider all past promises void. Young Master Lu, please leave, do not visit our door again in the future." I thought my response was dignified, but I underestimated how arrogant Lu Mingzhao had become after his newfound success. "You say it is void, and it is void. If my colleagues found out I abandoned my former teacher's granddaughter, wouldn't they impeach me for being faithless and disloyal? Then what does young Master Lu want?" I frowned slightly, truly unable to understand why he insisted on making this scene. Lu Mingzhao said matter-of-factly, "I'll take you in as a concubine. This way it honors our engagement, silences the gossip, and repays my teacher's guidance. Once we're in the capital, if you behave yourself, I'll naturally ensure you have food and clothing." I was so angry I almost laughed. What kind of repayment involves forcibly taking a teacher's daughter as a lowly concubine? But Lu Mingzhao was smug and proud. "Being taken as a concubine by an ordinary person would naturally be beneath you. But am I an ordinary person? I'm the third-place imperial scholar. a relative of the imperial family. Being able to enter my household is a blessing you've earned over several lifetimes. Just a son-in-law who married into the family by concealing his past, yet he really thinks he is somebody important. Grandfather was so angry, he grabbed the teacup beside him and smashed it at his feet. Get out! My granddaughter wouldn't be worthy of you even if you came with 8 sedan chairs to marry her as your proper wife. You're the one who is not worthy. Lu Mingzhao was so scared he jumped back, his face darkening. Old fool, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Your granddaughter is already 17, with no power or influence. That I'm willing to take her in is already a tremendous favor. In 7 days, I'll send a small sedan chair to fetch her. Whether you're willing or not, you have no choice. Having said that, fearing grandfather would strike again, he fled in a panic with his attendants. After Lu Mingzhao left, grandfather was still fuming. The great scholar who usually valued propriety the most kept sighing repeatedly in the room. I stepped forward, tugged at his sleeve, and coaxed him softly. Grandfather, that person is just a shallow petty man. How is he worth getting so angry over? If you harm your health from anger, who will stand up for Mingzhu? Grandfather helplessly pointed at my forehead. You silly girl, it is just that I can't swallow this anger. Back then, seeing he had some talent for studying, and usually put on an act of filial piety and respect, I thought he'd be a good match. But who knew once he gained power, he'd turn out to be a complete and utter hypocrite. Grandfather lost his wife in his early years and his son in middle age. Now I'm his only granddaughter, and he usually treasures me like a gem. Back in the capital, there were plenty of prestigious families seeking my hand in marriage. But grandfather always worried that noble households had too many rules and feared I'd suffer, so he declined them all. After retiring here, seeing Lu Mingzhao came from humble origins yet was willing to work hard, he had the idea of forming a marriage alliance. No way, this old man absolutely cannot let that shameless brat bully us like this. I'm going to write letters to Jingshu, Zijing, and the others right now. Jingshu is the courtesy name of the current emperor. Zijing is the right chancellor of the court. Although grandfather has retired to the countryside, his former students and subordinates occupy half the court. Making things difficult for a third-place scholar who got his position through connections is just a matter of one sentence. I thought that after sending the letter to the capital, this matter would be settled, but I never expected that bastard Lu Mingzhao would actually dare to come block my way. Mingzhu, the teacher acts all high and mighty, but you can't fail to recognize reality. If you don't come with me, are you really going to marry some illiterate farmer in this broken village? I squinted my eyes and looked at Lu Mingzhao standing before me. When I agreed to the engagement, it was partly because he seemed honest, and partly because I thought his ordinary family background and simple mind would make him easy to control. But I forgot that the flip side of being easy to control is often ignorance and arrogance. Young Master Lu, I said softly with impeccable etiquette, first, marrying corresponds to taking a wife, a legitimate wife. Second, even illiterate farmers understand honor and shame. Yet you, young Master Lu, a dignified third-place scholar, concealed your past and deceived the princess for wealth and glory, truly despicable. Third, grandfather isn't pretending to be noble, he genuinely looks down on you. After those few words, I turned to leave. But Lu Mingzhao, humiliated and furious, reached out to stop me. Shi Mingzhu, you always have this high and mighty, preachy attitude, lacking any of a woman's gentle compliance. If not for that, how could I have fallen for the princess? The implication was that he blamed me entirely for his own greed, his breaking of our engagement, and marrying another. Utterly speechless, I coldly shook off his hand. If young Master Lu has lost his mind, he should see a physician soon, rather than throwing a fit here. Behind me, Lu Mingzhao stamped his feet and shouted furiously. Ji Mingzhu, you just wait! I thought he was just making empty threats, but to my surprise, by that very evening, rumors were spreading throughout the village. When the villagers saw grandfather, they all smiled and congratulated him, saying our family had latched onto the great fortune of the third-place scholar, and that Mingzhu was going to the capital to enjoy a blessed life. As soon as grandfather heard this, his face darkened on the spot. He immediately clarified to the village chief and villagers, bluntly stating that Lu Mingzhao was ungrateful. But Lu Mingzhao turned the tables on him, saying to the village chief, "Village chief, I'm now the golden phoenix that flew out of our village. The teacher is old and senile. By ruining my reputation like this, he could affect this official's career." When the village chief heard this, he immediately panicked. This poor remote place had finally produced a third-place scholar, and the whole village was counting on basking in his glory. How could they tolerate grandfather getting in the way? The village chief's expression changed immediately, and he directed several strong men to restrain grandfather. "Mr. She has gone mad with delusions. He should go home and rest properly. As for Mingzhu's marriage being favored by Lord Lu is a blessing. It is not up to you." Seeing the villagers about to make their move, I shouted urgently, "Lu Mingzhao, if you dare lay a finger on my grandfather, I'll make sure you die without a burial place." Lu Mingzhao laughed arrogantly. "Such big words! Just a poor teacher. Who would dare oppose me, the current imperial son-in-law, for his sake? Grandfather isn't just a teacher, he is." The imperial tutor, before these words could leave my mouth, urgent hoofbeats approached from far to near. "Stop!" I turned to look, and my taut nerves finally relaxed. The newcomer wore a dark-fitted outfit, with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. It was none other than the second young master of the Southeast Military Commissioner's household, Li Jung. My father once went on a military campaign and formed a life-and-death bond with Military Commissioner Li. A few days ago, fearing Lu Mingzhao would act desperately, I specifically sent word to the Li family. Li Jung, along with elite guards, instantly parted the surrounding villagers. He stood before my grandfather and me, looking at Lu Mingzhao with a mocking smile. In broad daylight, a court official actually leading the charge to force himself on a common woman. Lu Mingzhao felt humiliated, his neck flushing red. "Who the hell are you, you insolent fool? How dare you meddle in this official's family affairs?" Li Jung gave a cold laugh, drew the long sword at his waist, and struck Lu Mingzhao's chest hard with the sheathed blade. "What do you think you are, daring to call yourself this official in front of her?" Lu Mingzhao was knocked back several steps, clutching his chest and roaring. "You dare assault a court official? Do you know who I am?" Li Jung's face was full of contempt. "Just a mere third-place scholar who climbed up by using a woman. You really think you're somebody?" Seeing that the people Li Jung brought all carried swords and exuded a menacing aura, the village chief quickly pulled Lu Mingzhao aside, urging him not to court disaster. Though unwilling, Lu Mingzhao could only slink away in defeat. I thought after being taught a lesson, he would settle down. Who knew that the next day, Lu Mingzhao would actually bring the Princess Manor's waist token and drag over the local county magistrate, along with all the bailiffs. County magistrate, it is them, colluding with local bandits, hoarding weapons, plotting something sinister. Lu Mingzhao pointed at Li Jung and us, speaking with righteous indignation. To curry favor with the prince consort, Magistrate Zhu immediately drew his sword. "Prince consort, rest assured. This official will certainly bring these rebels to justice today." Li Jung laughed in anger. "Rebels? You dare call this general a rebel?" Lu Mingzhao fanned the flames from the side. "Laughable. Just gathering a few petty thugs and daring to call yourself a general. How could a real general run to this godforsaken backwater to protect some lonely old man?" Li Jung helplessly picked at his ear, yanked a pure copper token from his waist, and flung it down at Magistrate Zhu's feet with a thwack. "Open your damn eyes and look carefully. What is this?" "The gold token of the Southeast Military Commissioner's headquarters." After Lu Mingzhao made out the characters on it, he suddenly burst into loud laughter. "Ha ha! You fool, you actually dare to forge a token of the second-rank military commissioner. This is a capital crime equivalent to treason. Magistrate Zhu, seize them now. This is a tremendous achievement falling from the heavens." Folks, I've seen people courting death before, but never someone who brings their own excavator to dig their own grave. The other party has already pulled out the military district leader's Jiadushi token, and this guy's first reaction is actually, "You forged it? Please, who would bother coming to a village to forge a high-ranking military officer's token? For what? For the village's local specialty products." Lu Mingzhao's brain probably ran away from home the moment he passed the imperial exam as third-place scholar, and he still dares to point fingers in front of the real big shot. The true son of heaven is about to make his entrance any moment now. I've already queued up the song, Cold Cold, for him in advance. Faced with Lu Mingzhao's stupidity, I sighed. Why don't you take another careful look at whether that token is real or fake? But he was absolutely certain. The Jiadushi is such a high-ranking frontier official. How could a village girl like you possibly have connections to him? Magistrate Zhu was completely bamboozled by Lu Mingzhao. With a wave of his hand, the bailiffs surrounded us with their fire and water sticks raised. Li Zheng's guards also drew their swords in response. Magistrate Zhu was greatly shocked. To dare draw swords in public, this truly is an attempt at rebellion. In Jin's view, the one attempting rebellion is you, this muddle-headed official. A deep and authoritative voice rang out like a great bell from behind the crowd. A large group of people came in grand fashion. The middle-aged man at the front had a calm demeanor and an imposing presence without showing anger. Beside him followed an attendant with a fair complexion, as well as several attendants dressed in plain clothes, yet unable to conceal their noble bearing. County Magistrate Zhu had his back to the approaching party. Upon hearing the word Jin, as if grasping onto a huge piece of evidence, he triumphantly shouted, "This official said you were committing great treason. You even dare to call yourself Jin. That is a term only His Majesty the Emperor can use." Before his words had faded, the fair-complexioned attendant had already stepped forward quickly. Raising high from his sleeve a bright yellow 9-dragon gold medallion, and shouted sternly, "Insolence! His Majesty is here. Why are you not kneeling?" County Magistrate Zhu fixed his eyes on that gold medallion representing the Emperor's presence, then saw the local prefect behind the Emperor, who was frantically making eyes at him. His legs immediately went weak, and he collapsed to the ground with a thud. He crawled forward desperately, his head kowtowing with loud thuds. This humble subject was blind, and did not know His Majesty had personally arrived. "I have offended the imperial countenance, and deserve 10,000 deaths." This humble subject was only concerned with local peace and order, and was momentarily deceived. "Your Majesty." The Emperor looked down at him coldly. "For local peace and order. What I see is you pandering to the powerful and coercing the old and weak." Lu Mingzhao, who was standing to the side, finally snapped back to his senses. He straightened his clothing and hat, then walked forward with what he thought was elegant grace, bowing deeply. "This humble subject, Lu Mingzhao, greets your Majesty." The Emperor's gaze fell upon him with a half-smile. "So you're Lu Mingzhao, the third-place scholar we personally selected back then?" Lu Mingzhao was overjoyed, thinking the Emperor greatly appreciated him, and actually began to establish connections. "Your Majesty is wise and sagacious. This humble subject just recently married Princess Zhaohe. By rights, I should follow the princess in addressing your Majesty as imperial uncle." He failed to notice the coldness in the Emperor's eyes and continued his accusations. "Your Majesty, please see clearly. This grandfather and grandchild truly don't know what is good for them. This humble subject, mindful of past kindness, graciously wanted to take this Xia family granddaughter into my household to care for her. Yet they colluded with local soldiers, injured this humble subject, and even forged military orders. They truly have no regard for the law." The Emperor let out a scornful laugh. "Who told you that token was fake?" Lu Mingzhao was dumbfounded. "Huh?" The next moment, I saw that lofty son of heaven quickly walk around him and go straight to my grandfather. The supreme ruler of all actually bowed slightly, performing a junior's courtesy. "Teacher, Jingshu has arrived late and let you suffer grievances." Grandfather's mustache twitched upward, seeming somewhat displeased. "Why did your Majesty personally leave the capital?" "Teacher!" The Emperor, who just moments ago commanded respect without anger, now seemed somewhat sheepish, like a student who had done something wrong. I knew well that grandfather was blaming His Majesty for mobilizing so many people for a private matter, so I stepped forward and gracefully bowed down. "This commoner girl, Xi Mingzhu, pays respect to your Majesty." The Emperor looked at me, his gaze instantly becoming affectionate. "So you're Mingzhu? You've grown so much when you were little. I even held you in my arms." It turned out that the current emperor, when he was still at his princely residence, was my grandfather's personal disciple. Back then, His Majesty was young and had a brotherly bond with my father. Later, father died loyally for the country on the battlefield. Grandfather was grief-stricken and submitted a memorial requesting to resign. His Majesty couldn't persuade him to stay and had to approve. But he kept Grandfather's official position all along, hoping that one day he would return to the court. Grandfather brought me to live in seclusion here, and with nothing to do, he opened a school to teach students. That is how he met Lu Mingzhao. Seeing his earnest desire to study and his honest conduct, Grandfather taught him wholeheartedly, never expecting to cultivate such an ungrateful wretch. At this moment, Lu Mingzhao was completely petrified. Teacher? How could he possibly be His Majesty's teacher? Isn't he just a poor country school teacher? He looked deranged, unable to believe what was before his eyes. The Emperor's gaze was cold and sharp as a blade, piercing straight at Lu Mingzhao. How dare you? This is the pillar of the literary world, my own teacher, the great scholar Grand Tutor Xie. If not for teachers' discerning eye back then, personally reviewing and refining your essays and organizing your thoughts, with your meager talents, how would you deserve to rank in the first class and place as third in the imperial examination? I originally thought you were teacher's prize student, which is why I appointed you as manhwa. Now it seems you've betrayed your teacher and ancestors, greedy for vanity and glory, utterly shameless. You don't deserve the title of manhwa at all. With that, the Emperor issued an imperial decree on the spot, stripping Lu Mingzhao of all his titles and official positions. Lu Mingzhao finally panicked, crawling and scrambling toward his grandfather. Teacher, teacher, I was wrong. I didn't know you were the imperial tutor. Please beg His Majesty for mercy on my behalf. I won't make Mingzhu my concubine anymore. I can make her my equal wife. Outrageous. The Emperor flew into a rage. What do you think you are? With Mingzhu's family background and talents, she would be worthy even if betrothed to a prince or royal. You, a commoner stripped of all titles, still dare to spout such arrogant nonsense here. Lu Mingzhao was pressed firmly to the ground by the guards. Seeing that pleading was hopeless, his face became extremely twisted. Fine, Grand Tutor Xi. You kept saying you'd cultivate me, yet deliberately concealed your identity as imperial tutor. If you hadn't intentionally tested me, how would I have taken this wrong step? You're just a fame-seeking old bastard. Grandfather's face turned ashen, utterly disappointed. He flicked his sleeves, turned around, and never looked at him again. The Emperor sighed, and took this opportunity to once again persuade Grandfather to return to the capital. This time, Grandfather looked at me by his side, and in order not to let me be buried in this countryside, he finally nodded in agreement. However, no one expected that barely a month after returning to the capital, someone actually beat the Denguin drum outside the palace gate, accusing my grandfather of imperial examination fraud. Imperial examination fraud has always been a serious crime that implicates 9 generations of one's family. Grandfather had long since retired and didn't participate in that year's examination question setting, so logically, he couldn't possibly be involved. But when I stood in the court and saw Lu Mingzhao kneeling in the hall, I understood everything in my heart. Lu Mingzhao, do you know what crime it is to falsely accuse a court official? The Emperor sat high on the dragon throne, his expression cold and stern. Lu Mingzhao kowtowed and said, "If this commoner had no real evidence, I would never dare to speak recklessly. The imperial examination is the foundation of the nation. Even though Grand Tutor Xie is this humble subject's mentor, this commoner can only uphold righteousness over family." He pulled out a stack of yellowed exam papers from his chest and held them high. "Your Majesty, please look. These are practice exam questions that Grand Tutor Xie gave this commoner half a year before the metropolitan examination. This commoner only recently discovered while organizing them that half of the questions are exactly the same as the actual examination questions that year." As soon as these words came out, the entire court was in an uproar. If Grand Tutor Xie could obtain the exam questions half a year in advance, he must have colluded with court officials to manipulate the imperial examination. This was not only academic misconduct, but also factional corruption. Lu Mingzhao's face was full of grief and indignation, but twisted satisfaction was hidden in his eyes. "Teacher, this commoner knows you did this for my own good, but this commoner absolutely cannot accept honors obtained through such cheating." Outside the court hall, the scholars were discussing heatedly, all lamenting that a great Confucian scholar of his generation had failed to preserve his integrity in his twilight years. Grandfather looked at those familiar exam questions, his hands trembling slightly. I couldn't bear to watch any longer. I stepped out from the ranks and knelt straight down before the imperial steps. Your Majesty, please see clearly. The matter of the exam questions truly has nothing to do with grandfather. Because those few policy essays and sectioned questions that overlapped with the metropolitan examination were not written by grandfather's hand, but rather they came from Mingzhu's deductions. The entire hall instantly fell deathly silent. Lu Mingzhao laughed loudly in mockery. Xi Mingzhu, to exonerate your grandfather, you'll really say any kind of crazy nonsense. You, a woman who has long lived in the countryside, on what basis could you predict the future and guess the court's top-secret exam questions? I slowly rose to my feet, my gaze calm yet radiating absolute confidence, looking directly at all the civil and military officials in court. Why couldn't I guess? Though there are many civil and military officials in court, those qualified to participate in drafting the metropolitan examination questions number no more than 200-some people. Among these 200-some people, one must eliminate those who already served as examiners in the previous session and eliminate those whose qualifications are still shallow. In this way, those who are truly qualified and have an extremely high probability of entering the examination compound number merely a few dozen people. As long as one carefully studies the memorials these few dozen officials have submitted in the past and the literary collections they've published, analyzing their political positions and preferences in interpreting the classics, one can roughly deduce the direction of the policy essays they would set, and their habits in composing sectioned questions from the 4 books. This isn't called predicting the future, this is called strategy. Faye stood up and applauded directly. Oh my God, you guys, this isn't fortune telling at all. This is straight up an ancient hardcore big data analyst. In an era without computers or AI, the female lead literally used her brain to create a complete profiling of court officials. She dug up everything about the civil officials, their resumes, political leanings, writing style preferences, and then predicted the exam questions with precision. Forget about idiots like Lu Mingzhao, who can only rote memorize. Even in modern times, the female lead's logical reasoning ability would totally be at the level of a senior Wall Street actuary. And Lu Mingzhao actually dares to look down on girls. Please, his level couldn't catch up to hers in several lifetimes. As my words fell, the court officials looked at each other in bewilderment, their faces filled with shock. The emperor's expression was inscrutable as he ordered someone to bring paper and brush. Standing right there in the Golden Hall, I picked up the brush and wrote freely. I listed out the names of officials who might have set the questions back then, one by one, and annotated their writing style characteristics and the exam questions I'd deduced beside them. Soon, the Minister of Rights took out the paper with his name on it with trembling hands. This is indeed the question I racked my brains to come up with back then. Even the angle for breaking down the topic is exactly the same. The other senior officials who had served as examiners came forward to verify one after another, their gazes toward me changing from doubt to deep jinhen. A genius! Such mental calculation and deduction. If you were a man, you'd surely be material for Prime Minister. I glanced coldly at Lu Mingzhao kneeling on the ground. Lu Mingzhao, you keep saying I'm a country bumpkin from the countryside. Yet you don't realize if the Great Song's laws allowed women to take the imperial examinations, where would there be any room for you to stand in this court? The reason I persuaded grandfather to take him as a disciple was only because I saw he had some perseverance, and I wanted to indirectly realize my own political ambitions that couldn't be fulfilled by cultivating him. Never thought that rotten mud can never be plastered on a wall after all. I turned to face the emperor and bowed deeply. This commoner woman is presumptuous, daring to speculate about court officials. I beg your majesty to punish me. The great hall was dead silent. After a long while, the emperor suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha! What foresight! What strategic calculation! Mingzhu, you truly are no inferior daughter of a tiger father. This matter relies entirely on your personal intelligence. How can there be any talk of cheating? I hereby absolve you of all guilt. After speaking, the emperor looked coldly at Lu Mingzhao. Lu Mingzhao, ungrateful wretch, falsely accusing court officials, deceiving your sovereign. Someone, strip this man of all his titles, exile him to the bitter cold lands of the far south, never to be employed again. Lu Mingzhou collapsed on the ground. This time, no one listened to his wailing anymore as he was dragged out by the palace guards like a dead dog. After court was dismissed, I ran into Princess Zhaohe outside the palace gates. She looked at me with a complex expression. I truly didn't know before that he had concealed his engagement to you. I've already petitioned the imperial uncle to completely divorce Lu Mingzhou. I nodded calmly. The princess is of noble birth. Cutting losses in time is truly fortunate. A few days later, the dean of White Deer Academy, quite renowned in the capital, personally came to my door and made an exception to invite me to teach at the academy. I looked at that letter of appointment, pondered for a long while, and finally picked up my book basket and stepped out of the Grand Tutor's residence. Since women of this era cannot enter the imperial court to govern the nation, then I will stand on the 3-foot platform and use my knowledge and ideas to educate true pillars of the nation who understand loyalty, integrity, honor, and shame. Phew. After finishing this story, I really let out a deep, long sigh of relief. I felt both incredibly satisfied and had a trace of emotion and resonance stirring in my heart. Let's first talk about that stomach, turning male-led, Lu Mingzhou. In reality, haven't we heard enough of this kind of plot where, once ashore, the first strike is to cut down the one you loved? The most typical mindset of such people is, now that I've climbed up, my once humble past and the person who witnessed my humbleness have become my shame. So he uses the extremely humiliating method of taking a concubine to satisfy his pitiful and insecure vanity. Too bad for him. His mistake was thinking he became the third-place scholar through exceptional intelligence, when in fact he was just a tool used by Xie Mingzhu and Grand Tutor Xi to realize their ambitions. But what really struck me in this story is actually that sigh from the court officials. If she were a man, she would surely have the talent to become prime minister. Family, when I read this part, my eyes really welled up with tears. Xie Mingzhu is just incredible. Using methods similar to modern big data collection and behavioral logic profiling, she single-handedly predicted with precision the questions for the nation's highest-level examination. That brain, that logic, that big-picture thinking, how many people in the entire imperial court could compare to her? But just because she is a girl, in that feudal era, she didn't even have the qualification to enter the examination hall. With all her earth-shattering talent, she could only try to realize a tiny bit of her ambitions through such an extremely roundabout and heartbreaking way, picking an unmarried man to cultivate him. This was Xie Mingzhu's helplessness, and even more so, the tragedy of that era. This reminds me of an experience I had in college. I was participating in a really hardcore STEM competition as team captain during the defense. One judge half-jokingly asked, "Was this core code written for you by the male students on your team?" I immediately grabbed the microphone and walked through the entire algorithm logic, from start to finish, without a single stutter. In the end, the judges were thoroughly convinced and gave us the highest score. Sisters, we're really so fortunate. We live in an era where we don't need to rely on cultivating a husband to prove ourselves. Today, whether it is the college entrance exam, grad school applications, promotions and raises in the workplace, or even starting your own business, we can openly hold our own admission tickets and compete based on our own abilities. So, Faye wants to use Xie Mingzhu's story to tell every girl in front of the screen, never ever waste your talent and time on propping up someone who is not worth it. You have such a smart brain, such strong willpower, why not focus on your own studies and work hard on your own career? Xie Mingzhu, in the harsh environment of ancient times, ultimately bravely picked up her book basket and walked into the academy, using teaching and preaching as a way to continue her ideas. And we, living in modern times, have even less reason to set limits on ourselves. Go read. Go get certified. Go make money. Go see the world. Go show those who once looked down on you that your wisdom and strength are enough to hold up your own sky. Alright, that is it for today's sharing. May we all be like Xie Mingzhu, strong at the core, clear-headed and independent, in our own way. Let's leave our brilliant light in this world. Love you all. See you next time.